Hello, this is Benjamin Fulford speaking on May 1st, 2026. Well, today is May Day, and this has been traditionally a spring festival since ancient times, but it's also recognized by labor unions around the world as the day when they won the right to the 8-hour workday. Well, the labor movement needs to get on the warpath again because the situation right now is very, very bad. Basically, much of the West is subjected to a system of Babylonian debt slavery, where they are forced to spend an entire lifetime paying money to criminal banks who create their money out of nothing because they've artificially raised the prices of houses beyond the ability for people to afford. Back in the 50s and 60s, a worker at a factory could have his own house, afford it and pay it off in no time, and be able to support his wife so she could be a full-time caretaker of her children and raise the next generation. Now, both parents have to work, and children are forced into brainwashing institutions at a very young age in order so that they can be brainwashed. This is the fight that is going on. And what's happening is, there has been, the white hats have reached a consensus that we are going to stage a jubilee, which is to cancel all debt, public and private, and free people from debt slavery. And then we're going to replace the current system of creating money out of nothing controlled by Satanists into a system where a future planning agency run by the smartest people on earth under complete transparency will ask people what sort of future they want and figure out how to make it happen. And we figured out what is blocking us now. And the trail leads to the fake King Charles of England. Okay, he's not the real one. And King Charles was just in the United States where he made a speech, celebrating 250 years of U.S. independence. And the speech was mostly all very good stuff, talking about how the Magna Carta, meant the government just couldn't arrest you for no reason, and support for human rights, democracy, rule of law. He touched all the right buttons, except for two things. One is he wanted to get the United States to support war against Ukraine, or war against Russia on behalf of Ukraine. Let's be clear. What's happening in Ukraine is not a war. It's a genocide. The population of Ukraine went from 90 million in the 1990s to about 18 million today. A lot of them were forced out of the country, a lot of them were killed. But this was a center of bioweapons attacks against humanity, of human slavery, of mass torture and murder of children, to harvest adrenochrome. All the worst crimes on earth were taking place in the Ukraine, and it's still a genocide. And this man goes around supporting it. The reason why is because they have videos of him torturing and murdering children. That's why getting rid of Charles, he's the M1, the controller of the money supply for the dark hats, is a number one priority. Now, his grandson, Prince William, is not the son of Charles. He's the son of the former king of Spain and of Diana. And they're Christians, and they're not involved in human sacrifice. And you need to replace the fake Charles with King William, or the United States and the UK will continue to degenerate. Now, the other thing that disturbed me about the Charles speech was his mention of the so-called assassination attempt against the fake Donald Trump. Now, remember, this was used to create an excuse so they could rebuild a White House ballroom into a temple of Satan. Okay. Now, if you still think this is a real assassination attempt, take a look at these videos. First is the one of all these people laughing as it's taking place. Okay, you don't laugh when there's a real assassination attempt. So take a look at this video. next one you want to look at. Here's this guy sitting around filming this whole assassination attempt while it's going on, instead of running and hiding under a table. So the whole thing was theater for no good reason, except to justify creating a temple of Satan in the White House. This is the reality that we're facing with this fake government, and the problem goes beyond the United States, and it goes to the UN Security Council, because they have shown themselves to be controlled by Satanists when they refuse to condemn United States and Israel for attacking Iran and killing civilians. Listen to Iranian Foreign Minister Araghchi explain this.
The Security Council is suffering from the lack of justice in its decisions and resolutions it makes. You know, how is it possible that the Security Council condemned us for defending ourselves and is not condemning the United States and Israel, who started this aggression?
So we can see the UN is controlled not by the people of the world. It's a privately owned enterprise that has nothing to do with the people of the world, unfortunately. And things are going to change, though. We're on the warpath to remove these people, and there's a lot of good news to be seen. For example, David Morans, who was the top aide to Anthony Fauci, is now being criminally indicted for COVID crimes. In other words, he's being criminally charged for genocide via vaccine. And this will lead to all of these people. So there's the Justice Department is on the case, and it will happen. Now, the other thing that's happening is that the United States economy, still controlled by the Satanists, is being quarantined. People in the United States, which is still occupied by Satanists, have noticed that their gasoline prices are rising. Well, guess what? They're not rising for most of the rest of the world because they are getting their oil from Iran, and they're just not paying to the satanic banks anymore. So the UAE is now independent from these people, and a friend who lives there has gone back and said life is returning to normal because they have agreed to join the rest of humanity against these Satanists. Canada has been blockading automobile parts to the United States, and they may soon block potash, and farmers right now in the United States already have a 100% increase in fertilizer costs just as the spring planting season has begun, and they've lost their export markets. And farmers were among the main supporters of the real Donald Trump, who, as I keep repeating, was replaced in June of 2025. So farmers need to, use their clout to remove these criminals from government. And the other thing, of course, is we need to get rid of that clown Pete Hegseth, so-called Minister of War, who's presided over the greatest military defeat in U.S. history. We have confirmed from multiple independent sources that all U.S. bases in the region have been destroyed. I am hearing some reports that up to 7 U.S. aircraft carriers have been destroyed now. Even if they haven't, the fact is that they are obsolete. Okay, any rational military would immediately bring them back and turn them into scrap, recycle the parts to make missiles and other technology that actually is, up to date, because they're obsolete and they're sitting ducks if they haven't already been sunk. Now, to understand just how incompetent the U.S. military leadership and the fake Trump are, listen to this testimony from the congresswoman from San Diego, which has one of the largest military communities in the United States. Listen to this testimony for a minute.
Mr. Secretary, as you know, I represent San Diego, the largest military community in the country. Right now, as we are speaking, 2,500 San Diego Marines are off the coast of Iran. Many, many other San Diegans in uniform have gotten 48-hour deployment notices. So this war in Iran is not theoretical for me or for my constituents. It's deeply personal. As you also know, on Easter Sunday, President Trump threatened to destroy Iran's bridges and power plants, writing, quote, "Open the fucking strait, you crazy bastards, or you'll be living in hell. Just watch." And 2 days later, President Trump wrote, quote, "A whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. I don't want that to happen, but it probably will." My office's phones have been ringing off the hook. I've heard from so many military families concerned about the president's mental fitness and whether he's fit to serve as our commander-in-chief, given that he's sending their loved ones into harm's way. Our troops, who have shown incredible bravery and tactical proficiency, deserve to know that their leaders are focused and stable. So, Mr. Secretary, you are with the president a lot, and it pains me to even have to ask this about our president, but my constituents' lives are at stake. Do you believe that the president is mentally stable enough to be the commander-in-chief?
Did you ask the same question of Joe Biden for 4 years?
Mr. Secretary, Joe Biden is not the president. Mr. Trump has been president for a year and a half, and I'm asking you
did
right
not.
now.
And I won't even engage with the level of disparagement that you're putting on the commander-in-chief, who indeed is. Meeting
Mr.
him
Secretary,
every single day.
Mr. Secretary, Biden is not the president.
He's the sharpest, most insightful commander-in-chief we've had in generations. And you want to compare, you want to ask that question after you and your fellow Democrats defended Joe Biden, who could barely speak and didn't know what day of the week it was?
As you know,
he governed through an auto pen.
When
you got a Secretary of Defense who went AWOL for a week. I can't be gone for 10 days, for 10 minutes.
I will reclaim my time.
Gentlelady's time. She's reclaimed it.
So, as Mr. Jimenez said, we should be taking leaders at their words. So is there a reason that we should not be taking our leader at his word?
Iran should not underestimate the will of President Trump and the United States military to achieve our mission.
Okay, well, I want you to know this is not a partisan thing. In fact, many Democrats have had, many Republicans have had these same questions. Marjorie Taylor Greene said he's out of control and he's gone insane. Candace Owens said the 25th Amendment needs to be invoked. Megyn Kelly, Tucker Carlson, who you used to work with, Alex Jones, Stephanie Grisham, the list could go on. So how do I explain to my constituents that while they are in harm's way, their commander-in-chief is posting these unhinged posts?
How did you explain to your constituents what happened on October 7th? Or what happened in Afghanistan? Or what happened with the debacle and the withdrawal in Afghanistan, where the troops were left? How did you explain that with Joe Biden's leadership?
Mr. Secretary,
how did you explain that to the Marines that didn't get medals, that we restored their medals because of that disastrous withdrawal in Afghanistan? Did you explain that to your constituents when Joe Biden was asleep at the wheel and he had an AWOL Secretary of Defense?
How about this next post? How can I explain this next post to my constituents? I'm Jewish, so this doesn't really bother me, but my understanding is that this is quite offensive to many Christians. So how do you explain this post?
I'm not here to explain posts. We have an incredible commander-in-chief who
Mr.
puts our troops first. I'm here for a budget hearing about our troops.
This is
historic budget that's giving us a chance to defeat
Mr. Secretary,
our adversaries. President Trump is doing that in world-class fashion.
This is about
Gentlelady
our
has
troops.
reclaimed her time, Mr. Secretary.
This is about our troops. This is about who is commanding our troops and if our troops can trust that they are being sent into harm's way under good strategy. The mental stability of our commander-in-chief is deeply important to our troops. It's deeply important to this country. It
wasn't important to you during Joe Biden.
I'll remind you that when there were concerns, Democrats came together, and he was not our nominee for president. So I encourage you to have the same courage that Democrats had. Mr. Secretary, you keep saying that he is the best commander-in-chief we've ever had, the best negotiator.
Talk to the troops.
13 American troops have died. More than 380 have been wounded. The Strait of Hormuz, which was wide open, is now closed. Less than 90% of traffic through the strait is still not going despite the ceasefire. The Iranian regime is still in power. It still has nuclear material. The war is costing Americans billions of dollars. And Mr. Secretary, if you think that this is what winning looks like, then maybe we should be questioning your mental stability. Maybe you are the one responsible for this failure, and the president should think about replacing you. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
So you can see, these are some of the most brainwashed and loyal people who have been following the official narrative devoutly. And yet even they are realizing that something is very, very wrong with the leadership. And we need to move in. We need to close these. We need to remove these people. And I know that they're going to try to flee to South America, but we must not let them get away this time. We have to make sure this satanic infection is permanently removed from this planet so that we can have world peace, where we have the people of humanity decide what kind of future they want to build together, and we make it happen. We don't be, scared from one fake terrorist incident or mass murder to another into fighting each other forever. The source of almost all wars, genocides, everything is this cult, and they've been controlling the United States and Israel. They've been killing millions of people since the end of World War II, and they'll continue killing because they need wars in order to be able to capture children for slavery, and in order to be able to finance their drug and other operations, in order to sell weapons to kill people. They are a plague on this planet, and an international movement is now working to remove them from power. But we have to go after the fake King Charles. We have to go after the fake Trump. They have to be removed from our screens, and then this nightmare will end. But we will keep up the fight. But like I say, the Charles is now a high priority white hat target. Same with the fake Trump and Hegseth. They all must go, and hopefully this nightmare will end soon, and we'll have a jubilee. All your debts will be canceled, and then you'll have government that actually does what you want, not forces you into slavery. That's what we're fighting for, and this is what May Day is about. Okay, well, that's what I have to say for myself today. Now I'd like to answer questions from readers and viewers.
I bet we have our first question for today. What do you believe happens to Wilcox? Do you believe that he actually committed suicide, or does it seem like there's more to this?
Well, let me tell you a story. They once sent a North Korean spy to one of my public speaking engagements, and she offered herself to me, and I was naive at the time. She was beautiful, she was young, and I ended up living with her for a while, and she started going to the police and saying I was taking drugs, I was being abusive. She started doing, trying to chase away all my friends. And finally, I took her out into the countryside where there was no cell phone coverage and asked her why she was doing this. And she explained that her family was being blackmailed. Her name, by the way, was Tomomi Matsuzaki, and I believe she was killed because she agreed to work with me. But in any case, she told me that her job, her assignment was to chase away all my friends, isolate me, and then dump me, and hopefully bankrupt me as well, so that I would commit suicide. Now, I'm not saying that's what happened to David Wilcox, but he did have a beautiful young woman and as a wife, and everything seemed to be going great. And I don't know what happened to him. I don't know if he was killed or if he was fell into a similar trap they tried on me. I just don't know, but he was trying to work on free energy, and even if he committed suicide, he was driven into it. That's my belief. Okay, next question.
Hi, Ben. What's going on with this war in Iran? We're hearing less and less about it recently, and also in Ukraine. We're not hearing much about anything that's happening over there right now. Is there any information that you can give us in regards to both of those ongoing wars?
Well, the U.S., the Khazarian mafia has lost in both Iran, Israel, and Ukraine. And I forgot to mention that Iranian Foreign Minister Araghchi was in Russia and last week, and they reached an agreement that the settlement with Iran and Israel and Ukraine were all linked to the same people, and that Russia, China, Iran, and now Canada, Germany, France, most of the West are agreed that these mafiosi gangsters must be removed from power in Ukraine, in Israel, in the United States, and they're putting together a united front. So the reason you're not getting news is because the United States and the Ukrainians have completely lost in the battlefield, and Israel, I understand, has surrendered and will soon be replaced by the state of Judea, which will be multi-religious, multinational, and friendly to its neighbors. So basically, these Satanists lost the war, and now they're circling the wagons in Washington, D.C., and in South America, in Patagonia. Next question.
Hi, Ben. Why, if the United States is a bankrupted government, is the US dollar so strong globally right now? Shouldn't it be crashing if the US government is bankrupt? It is way up right now on the yen, the won, and pretty much every other currency with the exception of the euro and the pound. What's going on with this?
Well, as I keep repeating, the US dollar is no longer American. What's happened is that starting in 2008, they quarantined all the dollars owned by people outside of the United States from the ones being newly created by the Federal Reserve Board. So these dollars are owned by China, they're owned by the countries that have trade surpluses, they're backed by gold, and they're separate from the dollars that they're using to pump up cryptocurrency in the stock market in the United States. Even though they're both the American dollar, they have different serial numbers, and they're not being accepted with. In other words, the U.S. dollar is strong because it's not American anymore. That's the bottom line. And the United States is still pretending they control it, but they only control it within the United States and a few other very limited places. And mostly the only way they can launder it is through the stock market and through crypto. Next question.
Hi, Ben. I'd like to point out that J.D. Vance, who also may not be the original, has been in the company of Kushner and Witkoff when trying to negotiate a peace deal. He's the vice president of the fake Trump administration, so he's essentially compromised like the rest of them. None of them can be trusted, and all of them need to be arrested. To think he's the lesser of the two evils, in my opinion, is ridiculous. If the bad guys are running Trump, then they must be running all of them. What happened to taking down Bridget Macron as the ringleader? Now you're telling us these other names after stating it was Bridget who needed to go to collapse the Trump show. So who is it that needs to go first in order to stop this chaos everywhere?
Well, if you see what France is doing right now, they condemned the war in Iran, and basically Brigitte Macron or Jean-Michel de Rothschild has surrendered. And so the problem now is some Italians in the P3 or T2 Freemasons who control the acting troop with people like J.D. Vance and the fake Trump who are the source of the problem. But my view is that if J.D. Vance is just an actor reading a script, then one way to do it would just be to give him a new script. However, I think it would be better at this point to shut down the entire acting troupe and restore actual democracy once again to the United States. So instead of having hidden controllers handing scripts to actors who appear, who play the role of vice president or whatever, we should restore actual democracy. And that's what Canada is fighting to do, to liberate their American brothers and sisters from this system. Next question.
I mean, we have our last question for today. Japan has sold off all U.S. bonds, is what you said recently. If that's true in substance, it's kind of a good news. But my doubt is the sell-off may be to trick a make-believe window, dressing up to look like so, because I suspect who would be interested in buying these real terrorist government U.S. bonds now? That's to say, who would be buying the bonds from Japan?
Well, what's happening is the United States is buying their own bonds by, creating fronts like through these offshore places like the Bahamas, and using cryptocurrency, or in other words, they pretend that somebody's buying them by printing money out of thin air, but they're not accepted as currency in most of the world anymore. And that's why your gas prices are going up. So, Japan did sell them, and the United States created fake money to hide that. But that's not going to make a difference because there's something known as the real world, and you're seeing that with hyperinflation in the United States and with the rise in gas prices. Your economy is being quarantined until you get rid of these Satanists and their fake government show. Okay, well, that's what I have to say for myself this week. And happy May Day, and I hope to see you again next week.